Hello and welcome back to another video. A few years ago I inked this lovely tiger with my Bortoletti glass dip pen like I always do my pet portrait commissions, and then I did this really bold black kind of background, and I have loved this piece, and it got a lot of love on Instagram, and I've been slyly entering this into a few competitions and a few gallery entrances, but because it's so small, I just don't think it's been doing very well. Therefore, I decided to go to the art shop and I picked up an A1 piece of paper, of the Khadi handmade paper. So this is A5, this is A1. We're going up a hell of a lot of sizes. And basically, my whole vision for an artist piece and a collection almost was that I wanted to evoke compassion and heartfelt feelings towards animals that are in habitats that are being destroyed. The animals are going extinct or on the verge of extinction, and I wanted to invoke those feelings and also almost highlight the effects that things that we do are doing to these gorgeous, gorgeous creatures and their habitats and the lovely, wonderful earth that we live on. So I obviously started with this piece, which, I mean, it's lovely, but it doesn't invoke the emotion, does it? Let's be honest, it really doesn't. So I actually found a reference photo, and I don't know what my obsession with orangutans is at the moment, but I found this lovely photo of an orangutan that looks really, I don't know, he's showing a lot of emotion, he's showing a lot of sadness in its face, and I wanted to capture that, and this image that I found was perfect for it. I went through so many days of research and on all sorts of websites to try and find a free reference image that made me feel the feelings I wanted to portray in my artwork, and this image does that. So we are going to try and attempt to ink this on an A1 piece of paper, but not only that, is we have another element of kind of pressure on us, is that I have been accepted to showcase a piece of artwork in a gallery here in Leeds, West Yorkshire, United Kingdom, and I want this piece to be it. I want this piece to be it, and I would love for this piece to go well, and that I do a huge collection of these pieces, and one day I can host a little show with them in. So I think the only thing to do is to get on with this. So I'm going to be working on this over probably several weeks. I may live stream it a little bit on Instagram, so if you've caught that, please, I thank you for the support that you may have given me on there, and I thank you for any support that you may give me on here. I'm nervous, I'm excited, I have a lot of pressure on me to get this done and for it to look good, and I want this to not be about me being in a gallery. I want this to make you feel something, and I hope it does. So let's get on with it. I need to grid up this A4 piece of paper and somehow get that to portray on here. I might have to do a slightly smaller grid, I don't know, but we're gonna have to have a go. I'm excited, I'm nervous, just let's get on with it. Let's get on with it. So when I started filming this video, it was probably about 2 or 3 weeks prior to the gallery, and I didn't know that at the time. The emails I received didn't tell me any dates. I didn't know anything about when this gallery was, which venue it would be hosted in, nothing like that. So I was fairly casual about doing this inking at that point. And then I started doing it and I was going really slow, and then suddenly I kind of received an email saying this is due in 2 weeks. If you want to change the artwork, you need to do it by then so that we can change the dimensions and change the location within the gallery, etc, etc. And so I suddenly went into panic mode that I needed to get this very, very large inking done in a very short space of time. And when I tell you I was very anxious, very nervous, and there was just so much pressure to try and get a big inking, that I've never done this size before, done really well and not have any time to change it, to adapt it, to make anew from scratch. I had no leeway on this. It had to be perfect and it had to be done as quick as possible. And when I tell you my hand hurts, it really, really does. At this point that I'm talking to you now, the piece is in the gallery. You'll see a few clips at the end. But the piece is up. I attended the opening night and it was pretty good, but I will tell you a bit more about that at the end, and I will start talking about the inking itself. So as you saw, I started to grid up my reference photo. I highly recommend, if you're going to do anything like that, the grid method is just so good. I just cannot recommend it enough. I then spent a very, very long time gridding up and sketching out the inking. So there'll be gaps of filming here, and that's purely because I either went live or I was filming it for a reel or something like that, so there are slight gaps in some of the progress here. But I spent, I think, an hour or two, no, it was 2 hours, I think, live streaming on Instagram doing the SketchUp of this piece, and it took a very long time, and I really wanted it to be right because I didn't have any time. You know, when I start inking, and I've said this in a lot of my pet portrait videos, that if the sketch isn't right, my inking's not going to be right, and I need to put all of that ugly looking sketch work in first and the work in there, because that will in the end make the inking a lot better. So once I had that sketched out, I, as usual, as any patron of mine that's watched me for a very long time knows, that my inking always starts with the eyes. I want to get the emotion into them. Unfortunately, with this reference photo, the orangutan is looking downwards, so there's no kind of reflective manner in the eyes, which at first I really didn't like. I thought you wouldn't get to see the emotion in the eyes as much, but because he's looking downwards, I feel like it's almost like an empty pit, kind of showing the emptiness in there, and I quite like that. So yeah, I start with the eyes, and a lot of this footage is sped up because I had over, well, I don't know how many hours of footage, and that's not me filming every second of me inking. I had a fair few hours of footage, so I've had to cut a lot of it out. I've had to speed up a lot of this, so this is not me working real time right now. This is me sped up probably about 4 times the speed. Maybe a hell of a lot more sped up than that, but it took a very long time. This is my real time inking. This is how long it takes. I do a lot of ghost inking as well, I've noticed. But yeah, I just started with the eyes and I was just laying down the ink. This is my Bortoletti glass dip pen. It is an Italian brand and it's made with Murano glass, and it is stunning. It's beautiful. I've never found an ink dip pen quite like it. The kind of cheaper ones you find online, they have very scratchy nibs, whereas the Bortoletti always has a very smooth nib and a very, very fine nib as well. I highly recommend. They are a little bit pricey, but they're beautiful, and I also highly recommend their inks. It's the best inks I've found to work with these pens as well, so I highly recommend those as well. And this paper, like I mentioned at the start, is Khadi 320 GSM cotton rag handmade paper, so a very, very premium paper. It's got a lovely texture to it which really lends well to the inking using this dip pen, and it just looks really, really good. But yeah, I'll leave you to a little bit of this sound, and I'll pop in here and there just to talk about the inking a little bit more. But as you can see, it's a very slow process, and I feel like the face was where I spent the most amount of time. I know quite a lot of you will find this very strange, but I think my favourite part of this inking is this branch that he's holding in his mouth, and the branch that he's holding just slightly above where I'm inking currently. I really enjoyed the texture of it. I'm not sure why, and I think I'd really like to at some point attempt to ink a tree. I think I'd really like that. Whether it's the full tree or just the, you know, the trunk of it, I don't really know, but I really like the texture I managed to get, and the fact that I've made it look quite 3D and knobbly and textured and, you know, all that sort of thing. And I feel like I captured it really well. I really liked it, and the inking was quite difficult when I realised, because this is such a big piece, I couldn't lay it down on my table because my body would bend the paper. It was just inevitable. It's such a large piece, when I'm stretching over it, it's going to bend. So I mounted it onto a board and I put it into my easel. The only problem with that is I had to lean forward quite a lot, so my back was aching a hell of a lot. And also, because my pen is then going upwards, the glass tip at the end there, as you can see, is twisted so that the ink flows down the ridges into the nib, and that's how you don't have to keep dipping it quite as often. There's almost like a makeshift well there built into the nib. Unfortunately, because I'm pointing my pen upwards, because I'm working on an easel, the ink was flowing in the wrong direction, so I was dipping. I've tried to cut out as much of it as possible in the editing, but unfortunately I am off screen quite a lot because I'm dipping into my inkwell a lot just to keep the ink flowing on here. Otherwise it would end up being a bit scratchy. It would also just end up with me not having enough ink on there, so it was one thing to bear in mind, and I think in the future I need to figure out a different way of doing it. I have a standing desk from IKEA that I put on wheels so it rolls around my room, so I can change the configuration of it, but that actually can tilt into a bit of more of an easel, and I think it's a bit of a softer angle than my big H-frame easel, so I think next time I might work on that. I think that would work really well. In terms of this inking, I think my other favourite parts, other than the branch, like I mentioned, are these lovely flowing bits of hair. I think I managed to get the fact that these hair bits were flowing over and there's chunks of thick hair, and I kind of think I captured the textures of the different parts of the fur, because his head hair was very chunky. It was almost like, do you know when your hair goes greasy and you get kind of locks of hair that have clung together? That's kind of what his head hair was like, but his hair on his shoulders and his hands was very fine and very fluffy, and I feel like I managed to portray the differences in those two textures of fur really well. So do let me know what you think, whether I managed to capture those really well as well. Now, it's a common thing for artists to really fear hands, and for the most part I do, but I also really enjoy doing hands, and I'm not really sure why. But the great thing about the orangutan is they have really long fingers, they have really weird shaped hands. Their palms are obviously way more extended than the fingers. The proportions are very different to a human hand, and I feel like that lends itself well to being slightly manipulated. I feel like if I wasn't to do it quite right, it wouldn't look out of place. It would just look like that's the strange nature of an orangutan's hand, and I just think that I managed to capture it really well. I'm giving myself a lot of praise here. It's very unlike me. I'm very self-critical, and believe me, throughout this entire process I was standing back and I was questioning every ounce of this piece. I was going over bits, I was darkening bits, I was thinking I shouldn't have darkened that, I should have lightened it up. There was so many emotions going through this piece of self-doubt and self kind of well, just self-doubt in general, and I'm quite surprised that I'm giving myself so much praise now I'm rewatching this back, and I think it's just because I've taken a step away from it. I've seen it up in the gallery, I've seen what it looks like, and I'm proud of myself. I think I'm proud of myself for achieving this. This was a goal for the last 2 years, and I actually took it off this year's goals because I didn't think it would become a reality, and it has, and I'm excited for what's going to come next. I have put it up for sale in the gallery. It is currently for sale. It's quite highly priced because of how long it took me. It took me over 50 hours to complete this, and a hell of a lot of back-breaking work, and I have priced it to reflect that. However, I don't think it will sell, and that's completely fine. I would love to receive this back. I would love to do a whole series of different sizes of artwork, different creatures, different emotions, everything, and I'd love to curate a whole collection, and I'd love to apply to a gallery for my own gallery. This obviously, this gallery is mixed with another 20-30 other artists, where I'd love to have a gallery where it was just my work and people could go and it was all my own things, and I don't take this as a loss if I don't sell this. I take this as an opportunity to further these feelings I want to create and further the cause that I'm striving to make awareness of, and I think that's how I'm looking at this. You will see actually that I took this and I had it professionally scanned, and I will be producing 50 limited prints of this, all printed on handmade paper, so it will almost look like it's the original but just at A3 size rather than the A1, and then after that I actually took this to get framed at the English Framing Company, which turns out is just around the corner from me, who knew, and I had it framed in a nice black frame. It's kind of floating in front of the mount, so it looks like it's floating, and it's also got gallery glass on it, so it doesn't have loads of reflection. It kind of stops that reflection on there. But I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing my process, hearing me talk about my process, and hearing a little bit about the gallery and how that's gone. I will warn you now, this gallery is not a prestigious, big, fancy gallery. It is a gallery run kind of off the back of other people, and is down this kind of side street, and is very much to give artists their first opportunities, and that's what they have done for me, and I'm very, very appreciative of the APS gallery. Shout out to them here in Leeds, and I will leave you with the final clip and the final little bit of the gallery. I'll show you the outside. As you can see, it's down a side street, and I will show you a little bit of the inside as well. Very small, but a really beautiful final kind of ending to this video, and a beautiful opening of the gallery. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye bye.